Welcome to the Designing Music Now podcast, a podcast dedicated to the art and technique of creating music for video games and interactive media. I'm your host, Dale Crowley.
And I'm Michael Sweet.
And today we are very honored to have with us Guy Michelmore from ThinkSpace Education. And you also have a company called Deepwater Blue, which you've been doing for 26 years now.
At least, actually, yes. I mean, I've been writing music for a living in one form or another probably since I was in my early 20s. And that's more than 26 years ago. So it's kind of, and I've watched the whole thing evolve and change. And for an awful lot of that time, for the first 10, 15 years, I was doing it part-time, the way a lot of us do. And for the last 20 years, I've been doing it, pretty much, as full-time as anybody can possibly do it. And also for 20 years now, I've been teaching film and television and games composers, the uncertain art of making a living doing what we do. So I've had a whole career really with this weird binary life of the hands-on practical writing music for film, games, television, and on the other hand trying to explain how you go about doing that to other people. So nowadays the whole education side has grown an awful lot, and we brought in our first master's students January 2015. We've now got just over 40 of them. We've got 3 new programs starting. And we're as busy as ever writing music. So that's why I have these big bags under my eyes. But anybody in this business knows, you don't complain if you have bags under your eyes, do you? Looking too well rested is a bad sign. So, so that's the sort of back of a postage stamp summary of how I get to be sitting here.
So I wanted to ask you briefly a little bit about, for those of our listeners that don't know who you are, primarily based out of London over the course of your career, or have you moved around?
I've moved around. I mean, I've been in London for the vast majority of my career. And then I got to a point 8 years ago where I suddenly realized all my clients were not in the UK. I was working an awful lot for Marvel, who are predominantly in Los Angeles. I had several big shows going on in France. I was working with people in India, Australia. I had a job going with Chinese national television. I thought, why am I putting up with London life? It is so expensive. It's dirty. It's crime-ridden. Why don't I come somewhere nice? So I sold up and moved, and now I live in West Rittering down on the south coast. And if I pan around, you can see that I've got the birds, and I've got all kinds of things hopping around in my garden outside. This is a home office studio. And I've got a bigger one down the road with all the rest of the team in it. But the bigger the team got, the more the little went on the door 16 times a day, and I went, I can't take this. So I needed a little quiet space where I could actually do proper creative work. So I am, one of these people now who I can pretty much, as long as I'm prepared to travel and go meet people, and I think this is true of all of us, you can really live and work wherever you want. And you don't have to put up with that gruesome business of city living if you don't want to. And when you've got kids and everything else, Michael's sitting there nodding sagely and we can see the green behind you. We can see us, living in a lovely part of the world. We are very lucky people to be able to do something as much fun as this and live somewhere lovely at the same time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the day where I can move to Mexico and and do all freelance work from there.
One of my ex-assistants, Stephen Burke, who went off to work for Rare, which then turned into Microsoft, he left and he just took a studio and he went to Southeast Asia, and he has a medium-sized studio which he sets up in a rented flat, and he has a tiny studio which he takes in a backpack, and he literally does sound design and music sitting on the beach.
Wow.
And you think, whatever he learned when he was working for me, watching me in a rather grotty part of London, he obviously thought, that's not how I'm going to do it. And he's now gone off and done it completely differently, and he's made the world his own. So, I'm very impressed with this as a way of life.
Yeah, with the proliferation of developers now, I mean, I've heard numbers, 2 million, 4 million. I've heard even 9 million developers worldwide, and all of those games need music. They all need sound design. Now, so it's really an interesting time, I think, to be a composer.
It is, and it's as an industry, it's growing at 10% a year. You just can't look. I mean, television's growing really fast as well, but you look at where a lot of composers have traditionally aimed, which is film, and it's just nothing like that. No. I mean, horrific statistics like independent film only 1 in 20 makes a profit. How can you possibly have an industry based on a 5% chance of a return? Yeah. And so a lot of our job when students come through the door is trying to open up other avenues. They say, you don't just have to be a film composer. You know, there's all these amazing things you can do. And, you know, games is one of the most exciting. And by a long shot, not just because it's a growing industry and there is employment, but just creatively. It's just, it's exponentially more, you know, more potential in many respects than all the other linear mediums put together.
So one of the things that we want to get a chance to talk to you about is your new program that you put together. Yeah. Can you go into that a little bit, how it was developed and the kinds of things that you're offering?
Sure. So we've been teaching film, games, and television generic media for quite a long time, and for a while it's become increasingly clear that games has become more and more specialized. It makes totally different creative demands on the composers and the sound designers who work there. It is the only non-linear medium, and that presents fantastic opportunities and challenges which you can't tackle alongside everything else. And if you really want, also it's becoming clear that to really succeed in game music or sound, you have to fully embrace the middleware and the implementation.
Correct.
You can't just be a film composer who writes linear music, which you then throw at a game. That the joy of game composition is making your music evolve seamlessly with the gameplay. And that means you've got to be much more technically adept than people have been in the past. So in order to teach people all the things which we as composers need to know, you know, writing to a brief, being able to master all these styles, getting on top of all the technology to create, you know, fantastic lifelike scores, you've also got to teach them, you know, how to use the middleware, how to have a creative idea which is implementable within, you know, within the game, and all the technical restrictions that go with it. So there's a lot to learn. There's an enormous amount to learn. So we've come up with, in consultation with an awful lot of people in the industry, we've talked to people, say, what do you want? What do you most want out of your sound designers and your composers? And it's been pretty clear. They want really hard-baked skills, and they want collaborative working. They want people who are able to work with each other, who really understand how to implement within the game. So we've got 3 programs. We've got a 12-month MA in composing for video games. There's a 12-month MA in sound design for video games, and there's an MFA, which is a 2-year course, which brings both of those together so that they will learn both the composition side and the sound design side. They're all online. We do face-to-face as well. All our students are welcome to pitch up any old time they like. They can phone us up and come, and they do, you know, if they have particular problems. And we do induction events in Los Angeles and over here, and we do orchestral sessions and things. But one of the joys, as you well know at Berkeley, of online teaching is it's not just the students who can be anywhere, it's the faculty as well. It's absolutely great. You know, Michael nods, he's sitting in a nice place. You know, I mean, but we have as many, you know, faculty in the West Coast of the United States. We have, you know, some in Europe. We've got quite a lot here in the UK. They all just come together online, and it's a really amazing thing. It's a really wonderful thing. And I think combining that with little bits of face-to-face, which go a long way when you're teaching online, and, you know, bringing together people, also people who are all working professional composers and sound designers, bringing them together so that they can pass on their knowledge to the next generation. But the nice thing I've found in the game community is it's so collaborative that people, you know, who have tremendous experience and credits are just only too happy to give their time and their expertise to helping people along. And I think that is different to film and television, where it just feels a bit more gladiatorial. And yeah. Is that your experience? I mean, you've done this for a lot.
Yeah, I think everybody, I mean, the game audio community worldwide is just a tremendous group of men and women that are working, you know, and as you say, collaboratively. They're very giving. You know, it's new enough that everyone is willing to help each other out. And it's changing so rapidly. I think that's the case. And I wanted to comment on your, you know, the online study. I've taken a number of courses online, also from Berkeley. And I find one of the other great things about it, taking online courses, is you can do it in your own time. So whatever busyness you have in your life, you can, you know, make time on the weekends or after work or whatever to complete all of the tasks.
Yeah, it's very, very important because, I mean, the vast majority of our students are not coming straight off the back of an undergraduate degree. They've been out there, they're working, they want to refocus their working life if they're already working in this industry, or they want to transfer out of something else and turn this into more of an income. But they've got families, they've got jobs, they've got lives. They can't just up and leave for 12 months. And so the ability to work part-time, to study part-time, is a huge deal. And also, one of the things which we really like about it is it's a much better model for how their life is going to be when they come out. But with the greatest respect to Berkeley and other bricks and mortar institutions, it is a slightly sheltered environment. And when you come, and if you're learning online, you're also having to deal with the kids knocking on the door and all the problems with your own gear. And these are real problems which you have when you get out there in the real world. And so we hope that that also helps prepare them better for the professional world they'll encounter when they graduate.
One of the challenges in teaching games is the sort of vast amount of knowledge that you need to have, right?
Oh,
you kind of need to have
the
composition degree, and you need to have all this recording knowledge and tech knowledge, and then you can teach, finally get to that level where you're teaching some of the more advanced techniques that game developers are wanting in their games. So what's your ideal student? Where are they coming from? What kind of background do they have? Do they have a little bit of knowledge?
Starting I mean, I think, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the reasons that we feel comfortable teaching all our programs at postgraduate level is you really hope that people come to us comfortable in being able to write music, comfortable with the technology. They should be able to be working fluently in whatever DAW they want. This is not the place to be learning, how to put chord progressions together and things like that. All of them come in different levels. Some will be more techie, some will be more musically adept. But the biggest challenge for people coming into the media is learning to write within somebody else's creative product. That a lot of them, particularly the music graduates, have been told that the composer is God and everybody else is just beneath them. But this just isn't true in the commercial world. You've got to try and carve your distinctive little unique niche out, but within somebody else's creative bubble. And it's a big change of attitude, and it presents enormous creative and communications problems, trying to work out what somebody wants, trying to overcome difficulties when it doesn't work. So those are the things which they're going to have to learn. And as Michael says, looking at the curriculum in terms of what they have to learn technically is pretty awesome. There's a lot to take on board. So they've got to be technically very savvy. We have had issues with students who come in with excellent music, onto some of our earlier programs, who then struggle to get up to speed with the technology fast enough. And it's really clear that it's not viable to learn. A lot of people who are good musicians think, right, I've spent my whole life learning music, sampled orchestration, I'll learn that next weekend, and maybe Cubase I'll fit in the weekend after that. And of course, as those of us who do it all the time say, no, it's a whole thing in itself. I mean, it takes years to get on top of this stuff. So you do need to. We listen to the people's show reels and portfolios, and then talk to them and really trying to get to grips with how good they are technologically. And we give them little tests and things like that because it's in their own interests. Currently we're 18 months in and we still have 100% retention. But
wow.
But you notice I touched wood there.
For online, that's amazing because that's
we go to enormous lengths to try and keep people on track, but it's also selection and trying to make sure that you're not taking people on who are bound to fail or not bound to fail, who stand a significant chance of failing. But you have to take people on with the belief that you can teach them to be, who they want to be. So you're looking for potential, and that's a really difficult call. You don't always get it right, as Michael will say, but I'm sure. But when you do, and you find somebody, and you think, I think you've really got the potential to grasp this creative challenge, and suddenly they reinvent themselves. You just feels. I sometimes accidentally find myself referring to them like, oh, I went with the kids to, it feels like your students are part of your, your offspring, and you're wanting to get them out there in the world and make them succeed. So, it's very nice to be able to see that happen. And but you're absolutely right. Getting the right students at the right level is absolutely fundamental to getting out the other end.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest challenges that we faced with our graduate program, Berkeley's graduate program, is kind of targeting those students. And they're different than, say, a Berkeley graduate. A lot of the people that come into a master's program have already a composition degree, maybe from a conservatory, where they don't have as much technology background. And obviously, technology is one of the great strengths that you need in working in the games industry.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes we do send them away to and put them through non-degree programs where we can get them up to speed in their own time, and also they can they can grasp whether or not this is for them, because it's just not for everybody. And there are other areas of the media which they may be able to thrive in, but trying to be really honest with them about what it requires to succeed, not just in the program but in life. The other thing we're very careful about is with looking at the applicants for the new game music programs is that they really understand what games means and that they're focused on that as an output. Because the other programs are more broad-based, and we take them through animation and commercials and everything else. But if they're learning games, they are really learning games, and they are making a huge commitment of time and money and effort to acquire all these skills which are going to make them employable. But it is with a very specific objective at the end. So we're keen to try and make sure we're taking on the right people.
So let's talk about employable, because I think that is one of the things that our listeners and everybody else that wants to get into game music and composing music for games want to know. What do you tell prospective students that have that question? What are my guarantees? What are the the possibilities of me actually landing a full-time job? Is this something that I can just make some part-time money? What do you tell your students?
Okay, firstly, if you succeed, it's going to take a long time. The average takeoff is like 5 to 10 years before you can do this full-time, having compared notes with many of my colleagues. Secondly, if you are risk-averse and you want to earn lots of money, go and work in a bank or become a lawyer and do this part-time, and do it at weekends. If you're going to really stress about this in 20 years' time, when you've got school fees to pay and everything, don't do it. Because it takes a certain spirit and resilience, the ability to be able to reinvent yourself constantly. But for a lot of people, and what for most people it's going to be is they will have a day job and they will start doing this part-time. And over the course of time, the sort of little needle, the balance between the two will gradually start to swing, and then you'll get bigger and bigger jobs, and eventually, if things go incredibly well, you'll be able to earn a living doing this full-time. There are no guarantees. We don't teach people, we're not taking people on to fulfill a dream, because a dream is something that could possibly come true, but probably won't. I'd like to be Brad Pitt, but that is clearly not going to happen anytime soon. But there is, you can make a business plan, and people can realistically expect to enter the industry at some level. But a lot of people may be more than happy doing this 1 or 2 days a week, earning some extra income, but mainly feeding the soul while they have a day job which feeds the kids. And there are those who have exceptional talent, who can persevere, who can get through all the barriers which are there to stop people earning a living, and will make it to the other end. You can't give people a guarantee, and we try and the fact that everybody on the program earns a living doing this, they know how hard it is. We all know how hard it is, and we do them an enormous disservice if we pretend that it's anything else. But that nonetheless doesn't put people off, and if they're really dedicated to taking on this challenge, then we will do everything in our power to help them succeed.
And do you have any particular, as a follow-up, any particular success stories or things like that from some of your students in the past?
I'll tell you, one of the first, right back at the beginning of the non-degree program, almost 20 years ago, we'd been doing this for about a year, and I suddenly got this letter from a guy, and he said, I just wanted to say thank you because I was a dental nurse, and I took all my coursework, and I applied to Rare, as it was then. It was a game company in the UK, and he got a full-time job as a composer.
Wow.
And I just changed this guy's life. I thought, oh my, it hadn't dawned on me just how dramatic and binary that change can be. And there've been loads and loads and loads ever since who've gone on to spectacular success, big AAA movies and all the rest of it. But it's it's getting people. Actually, the biggest success is when you take on a person who's writing slightly dated music but has potential, and then somewhere along the line they kind of shuffle off all this and they reinvent themselves and they come up with something fresh and exciting and different. And you think, that is the power of education. When it works, this alchemy suddenly, everybody's experience and effort, and this guy's incredible dedication to his, to trying to succeed, and it suddenly goes bing and it works. And you think, okay, that's worth it. That's worth it. That's good.
Please.
So we were talking about sort of the business aspects, and can you talk a little bit about, in terms of, I don't know if you can define it as percentages, but do you spend some time in your program talking about the business aspects and how to get work and things like that?
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that?
Okay, there's a number of things. We're actually just completely redoing our business work and how to get work module at the moment because it keeps changing. But one of the things, and also the model, I mean, what works and what doesn't work keeps changing. One of the things which has also come out of that is that almost the business and the getting work module is really just pulling a whole load of other things together. If you don't write great music, you will, however well you do at the getting out there and shaking hands thing, you will not get a single job. If you don't write music which is distinctive from the rest of the crowd, if you don't understand what your customer wants, if you haven't really understood the need to do your market research, so you're totally market focused, you understand what people are buying right now. If you don't do all those things and produce great mock-ups and everything else, you will not get any work. So all that is really, is distributed throughout the course. Then you bring it together and say, really, right, this is how you go about doing it. These are the pay models which work. More and more we're saying to people now that just, pitching with a SoundCloud link and an email is just throwing petals in the wind. There's chances of getting a response to that so low that the thing which seems to work is getting out and meeting people. You've got to turn up at GDC, you've got to go to Develop, you've got to go to E3, you've got to meet clients, shake them warmly by the hand, make a personal relationship, follow through with great music and an understanding of what they're doing, build relationships in the long term, look after your clients, because one client leads to, like planting an acorn leads to a great tree of career. And that's why it takes so long to take off, because you've got to wait for that first client to go through the whole production cycle again before they come back. We all have very loyal clients who aren't exactly regular. A regular work is once every 2-3 years. You think, yeah, but the bills come in a bit more quickly than that. But so there is a very, and also one of the things we're doing is I'm just running a series of classes now for the graduates who finished in January, because actually some of this is more useful, like 6 months later when the dust has settled and when they're actually really trying to do it, and when we do get jobs which we're able to bring grads onto, we do. So we've got a film going through at the moment. We're taking a low budget film which we probably wouldn't normally do. But I can get 6 or 7 students onto it in various, forms. So they'll get a credit, they'll be up on IMDb, and they'll get some real professional experience. So, we can't do it for everybody, but we do it as much as we possibly can, with the hope of getting the fledglings out of the box and flying like a condor across the valley.
And what do you recommend for students in terms of getting internships with established composers?
It's a great thing if you can do it. It is very restricted to people who of a certain age, between probably 25 and 33, who live in Los Angeles,
right.
New York, London. The number of real serious internships available is, although it seems like a lot when you bump into the sort of itinerant crowd of assistants in LA, the truth is they're very, very. In the great cities, and also the vast majority of our students are older, so they're not going to be able to give up work, travel halfway around the world and work for nothing. It's just not going to work. Internships do work, but there is I feel slightly uncomfortable about the unpaid internships. There is a huge challenge in this industry, which is the working for free thing. It's terrible in film, the work for free buffer, as we refer to it. The bit you've got to get through before anybody's actually going to put their hand in their pocket and pay you is enormous, almost defeating for all but the world's best supported new entrants into film, and it's really growing in game as well. Number of people who get paid on their first gig are very small, and so you have to do 2, 3, 4 gigs before you start getting any form of income, and that's going the same way. That's slightly uncomfortable. So, we really want people. There's no point in getting people into an industry where they're not going to get paid. So it is very important that people get paid, and so internships are great, and you learn a lot, but they are of limited value to people who are outside that fairly narrow demographic.
One of the things I wanted to ask about your program, and I think all programs struggle with this on some level, where you're teaching technology, is there's the technology side, and then there is the creative component, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you go all technical, you end up being a trade school, and if you go all art, you end up being an art school. And where how when you were developing your program, how were you balancing those things?
First time through, we got when I first looked at the program, we put in all the technical things people needed to know, and suddenly realized that wasn't going to work because we weren't giving them an opportunity to grow creatively. What we've done is rather than put lots of technical skills into little boxes, we've tried to get one of the things which motivated me to design the program the way it is I've had quite a lot of graduates come for jobs, and they said, oh yeah, I've done a module on Pro Tools, I know how to do Pro Tools. And you say, okay, sit down, comp this track for me. And they have no idea. So they have a sort of useful working knowledge, but it's of no value in the working world because they haven't got a hard-baked skill. So that's something to be avoided. So what we've tried to do is to take them through a series of projects. We've licensed in quite a lot of material, mostly Unity games, some commercial releases, various other things, and we get them to go through the workflow 5, 6 times, so that each time getting more complex, each time adding more skills on the top, but the hard-baked bottom skills, the ones they really need, they're going to, by the time they get to the end, they'll really know how to do them, and they'll be able to write. And because they're project-focused, they've got to get the balance between the creative and the technical. Some of them will go further with the technical than others. There will be a ceiling to how far, in terms of the complexity of implementation, some of them will go. But the other thing which occurs to me, the more I talk to games composers who've been doing this a lot longer than me, is that it's mostly about problem solving. That you can't really give people a playbook, because today's playbook is going to be about as much use as a bus timetable 12 months later. You've really got to teach people, or give people the opportunity to learn rather than teach people, by presenting them with a creative technical problem and getting them to find a technical solution which blends with a creative solution. That's the whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
It's this whole thing that, how can you take these fairly simple, I mean, when you describe layering and branching in people, it's not rocket science, but then when you combine them together, you get something which is exponentially more complicated. And then every time you bump into a new project, there's a new challenge and nobody's told you how to do it. So probably teaching people creative problem solving using technical tools is the best we can do. And people in many respects find their own balance, whether they're more technologically oriented or more creatively oriented. So I think it's a broad church, and there are roles for people in the industry who go to both extremes.
Well, let's talk about some of the specific tools that you teach in the class. Which implementation tools do you teach?
Well, we're starting with largely with FMOD, because it's the most well established on both platform, both PC and Mac, and 80% of our students come in with Macs. We're quickly going to follow that up with Wise, and then we will look out. I mean, because the thing is, I know that you have an interest in Elias, and there's Fabric, and there's all these new tools. But I think if you know, I mean, almost everybody going out there is going to need to know FMOD and Wise at the moment, but then who knows where it's going to be in 2 or 3 years' time. But it's a bit like learning a second and a third language. If you know one of these things really well, that it is much easier to acquire new. I know that people, when they move on to Wise, oh, it's like learning Contact after being working in Cubase, and I don't know, it's all so horrible. But you can't teach them every piece of software under the sun, but you need to learn. And a lot of I mean, if you look at something like FMOD, actually, it's not that complicated. It's a bit like explaining the rules of chess. You can do it in half an hour, but actually trying to work out, the Sicilian defense on the basis of that takes a long time. And that's what it is. It's a tool to solve problems creatively. So we will offer, going forward, because we have to adapt all the projects so that what we're doing, we've got an audio programmer who is taking the Unity projects and linking them to FMOD with all the triggers and so that therefore the students will start with an empty project, basically, which they will be able to implement their sound and music in. We'll also be doing some audio programming for those with that kind of bent, but there is a sort of line and where most composers are expected to be able to edit scripts, but they're not expected to be able to code, and there's a sort of gray area between the two. So we've sort of gone down that line. But I keep on talking to people who say, there's this new tool or that new tool or Fabric's it's amazing, and Reaper's coming from like a train at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
While Logic is dropping away because of lack of interest or support, I don't know quite what it is, but Cubase is absolutely up there. It's the best game in town, and I've used DP for a long time, and that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Reaper is kind of the sort of
I
dark
love Reaper. Yeah, I've been a Pro Tools guy since the beginning, but Reaper is coming up in my book.
It does so many things. Its audio is really great, and it's got this integration now, and the same with Nuendo is integrating with Wise. That's a really exciting thing. And the way those, you just wait for another announcement to decide what program's going to be next year. It's kind of quite, but there is a limit to that. To how much one can keep up with that, but we do our best.
Just wanted to mention one thing about Elias. I think it's often misunderstood about what it is. It's not really a competitor to FMOD or Wise. It's actually, the way I like to describe it is like if FMOD and Wise are the pancakes, Elias is the syrup. So it's a great tool for composers. It's just focused on music. And so it's something that I think it's a great pedagogical tool as well for teaching composers how to make adaptive music. So I think, and it's also much easier to learn because there's the interface is much more intuitive for musicians.
That's really good. I think we do live in a universe now where increasingly in the world where people will have to use multiple pieces of software. The day you could say, I'm Cubase man and I am only ever going to use Cubase, are really gone. I don't go into many studios where they don't have Ableton Live going. And they'll say, and people use Logic just for that pitch drop thing because it's so much better than anybody else's. So I have Logic on all my machines, and the only reason I have it there is so it can go because it does that better than anybody else. And I think, okay, it may be a bit of a waste of a great piece of software, but if I could buy the plugin which did that, I'd pay that for it. So why not? So, and I think we are getting used to this idea of using particular tools for particular things, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It means we're kind of quicker on our feet and we're able to adapt better. And this is before VR's really got going. I mean, where are we all going to be in 18 months' time? What will we be talking about? Something we've never had. It's Facebook have bought the VR audio technology. I mean, it's kind of what's going on. Yeah, how do we keep up? Going for a long lie down.
So I have two other questions that I want to run by you. One is with regards to tools, right? We sort of started off this conversation about how long it takes for a composer to kind of get to the level where they're actually doing it full time and they're making money from what we're doing. And then we're teaching sort of the tools of today. I have a lot of challenges reconciling teaching a program today, even though the students are like, oh, we want to learn Wise, we want to learn FMOD or Unity or whatever it is, and then sending out into the world and where they're not finding work right away, and then it's like all the tools change, and it's so can you give me your thoughts in terms of how you're reconciling this length of time that takes for students to get jobs versus the technologies that you have to kind of teach now?
I think if you teach them to learn technology, then you are teaching them to keep up. And if you, because we get a lot of students come in and say, I use Pro Tools, and that is fine by me. I am not using anything else. And that's really not going to help because we all know that once you've learned the first couple of pieces of software, the third and the fourth and the fifth just get easier and easier, because you go, oh, that's a bit like Photoshop, or oh, that's like Cubase. And if you help them through this and you find a way of delivering software training which is effective and quick and fun and all the rest of it, you get them going, and then you help them to learn it by themselves. Some of them do it better than others. Some of them, there is somewhere in us, there is a gene, which is the software acquisition gene. And they haven't tracked it down yet, but when they do, I'll have some extra ones of those. But it is true that some people will just find that easier, and those are the people probably who will find it easier to keep up. But equally, they're not necessarily the people who write the most original music, or who find it easier to cast off their love of John Williams and write something which actually people want to buy right now. So there's other forms of evolution, and I think the creative evolution is way harder than acquiring software. Recognizing in yourself that aspect of your music is out of date and needs to be jettisoned, or you needs to be reframed in some way that sounds more of the moment, that's tough as hell. And
the art part. The
like
art of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like throwing away your teddy. It's kind of one of those, we know we have to do it, but it's very painful, and that iteration comes around faster and faster. And if you don't do it, you'll fall behind and get trampled by wolves, and you won't earn a living anymore. So go on.
So the second sort of big topic that I wanted to ask you about is something that I found challenging in terms of the difference between online curriculum and the curriculum that I'm teaching in a classroom, and that is the collaborative aspects. And I'm wondering if you have ideas. I think that no one's tackled this problem in the online world very well, and I'm wondering, do you have thoughts about that, or are you doing things like that?
Okay, I mean, it's the very nature of the fact that it's online. I mean, is a model, as we mentioned earlier, for the way people work. So remote working is something we try and teach people, because there is a collective experience of those, particularly software developers actually, who are used to working in distributed teams, and they've come up with kind of things which say, oh, this tends to work and this doesn't tend to work. Just human, personal things about how you organize your space and time, those sort of things. So the fact that we are a distributed network of students and teachers actually is realistic, and we do have sound designers and composers, and we are going to get them to work on the same project. And we are looking for ways of getting multiple students working on the same thing. As I say, we've got a film going through at the moment, which we're trying to do that. And it's collaborative. The collaborative aspects of this are more difficult than if they're working in the same room, but equally, in some respects, more realistic, because the challenges they'll face are the same as when they're working in a distributed team with a developer in wherever, Paraguay or somewhere. So it's not easy, and we haven't cracked it yet. But the tools get better and better. They're still not great. I mean, there's still stuff you can't do. I mean, really basic stuff, like trying to spot a movie with somebody in Los Angeles when I'm here. I mean, it's really hard. I mean, because if you use things like live stream, it's slightly off topic, but if you use things like Ustream and live stream, there's a 20-second delay. You get wonderful quality, but there's a 20-second delay. You can do it another way, and then you can't see and hear it. So the technology has yet to catch up to what we want it to do. But look at us. We're sitting here, a world apart, having a perfectly, normal, sensible conversation. We use really good webinar software which allows the students to do the same thing. So we could equally well be sitting around, Michael's table in north of Boston, admiring the view.
You're welcome.
Oh, great. Okay, well, it's all over the Michael's place. But it's, this is collaborative. This works. So we need to find way, but it is a matter of learning how to do it. And the more you do it, I think the better at it you get. But yeah, it is tough. It is tough. And we're, if I come up with a really cool way of doing it, I'll let you know.
Sounds great.
So we've talked a lot about the technological side of composing and the tools and all of that. Let's talk a little bit about what you teach your students in terms of actual getting into an orchestra and doing orchestration and, the creative aspect. How do you approach that?
Well, okay. So orchestration is another huge one. I mean, we have an entire degree which is just to do with cinematic orchestration, where we take people who are good musicians and teach them what actual. I was recording at Air Studios yesterday. It was wonderful,
Wow.
absolutely great. But you suddenly realize I'm sitting there feeling comfortable about this because I've done it quite a lot of times, and I know the kind of working practices. I know how the Pro Tools bit works. I know how the Sibelius bit works. It's another thing where you just got to learn a lot of stuff. And so we got a whole course which is dedicated to teaching orchestrators how to do that. All our students online get access to all the materials and all the webinars and everything else from all the other programs.
Wow.
So if somebody particularly wants to, so for example, the orchestration students, if they have a particular interest in games, they can access all their game stuff. If game people, if they want to really dig deep and they have the time into the orchestration, then they can do that. And we got sampled orchestration modules and everything. I think people get hung up on orchestras, and I don't think it's necessarily where it's going to be in 10 years' time. And I'm almost more interested in trying to get people to do something which is not orchestral, because there is this default setting which is trailer sound, and I can't help feeling that the clients are getting a bit bored. I mean, although there's a lot of it out there, people have got to start looking forward. Nobody really wants to buy yesterday's music, and there are quite a lot of students who come in who just want to write the music they love, not the music which the client wants to buy. And it's a matter of, separating out what you love from what they love. And so, yeah, the orchestration side is important. We did our first session with students at Warner Brothers in Los Angeles in March, and they, got there to conduct their cues, and they did it with great confidence, and they had a wonderful time. But as anybody's been on an orchestral session knows, if you haven't done your homework right, it can either be heaven or hell. And if it goes wrong and it all sounds like a car crash, there's the worst place to be.
Unless you're going for that.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's what I meant. Yes, me and Ligety, we're like that.
Yeah.
We just go, oh my.
So it sounds like your students get together at various points in your program.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing. I think it's a great selling point for your program that you allow students the other parts of the curriculum to kind of, I think that's unique. I haven't heard of that before in a program. It's really great. So congratulations. That's really amazing.
I mean, well, it dawned on, all this stuff, all this knowledge is there. I mean, it's not as though they're going to go through the program 3 or 4 times. So, it costs us nothing, and it just benefits them to give them this vast resource of knowledge. And every time we do a webinar, which is very much like this, they're all recorded. So, there's this enormous body of knowledge, and it's just a great resource. It's, I think one of the advantages of online is that, and sort of new alternative providers like us, is that we do tend to rethink things from the ground up rather than relying on the way things have been taught in the past. And, just delivering the same lecture every year is not necessarily the best use of anybody's time. And maybe, you produce the lecture in a better way using video, and then you workshop things. The stuff which people are starting to do. I've heard a lot of people in education saying, in 5 years' time, people won't talk about online education. It'll just be education, because it's just going to make more sense to blend all these different methods of delivery so that you can deliver stuff in the most effective way for the student and the most cost-effective way for them, so that they're getting value for money and engagement and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so a follow-up there is, you said you want to get away from orchestras. Do you mean more towards sample libraries and composing in Contact and so on?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, okay, I've got views of something. I know I've got every sample library known to mankind. But have you noticed how the rate of production has slowed right down recently? When was the last really huge release? There's some solo string stuff coming. Trolls is doing great stuff with his Century brass and strings. But sample technology, I think, has hit a ceiling. And there's a good reason for this, because in order to get another step forward, they're going to have to spend exponentially more money for an ever-decreasing number of people who are going to be able to buy it, because they've already got everything. So I think, in one sense, all the tools you're going to have, you've got. Go and have fun. I don't think in 10 years' time there's going to be a massive new array of sample libraries out there. But what I'm really keen to get people to do is to make stuff up, to play real instruments, to combine that with sound design, to take your teacup and turn it into an instrument, to find a way, or to use real players. Sitting in that studio yesterday, listening to those brass players, I thought, yeah, it's it's like it's like the difference between a matchstick model of the Eiffel Tower and the real thing. That samples do a brilliant job, but there's this real ceiling to how far it can go. So I'm very keen that people move away from the whole kind of classical romantic orchestral model as being the only way to write music. I think that's limiting. They need to be able to do it because that's what a lot of clients want, but I think they need to be able to look beyond that.
Another big difference between the online model and sort of the on the ground in a classroom model, and this relates to collaboration a little bit more too, in terms of if you go to a music college or you're in a place with musicians around, you can bring them into the studio and have them play on stuff. When you're teaching composers or orchestrators through an online program, do you have any requirements about that they need to have a microphone set up, and during the class they have to record musicians at their house in a home recording studio? That's something that we've definitely been challenged with, and I think everyone that teaches online, it's like, how do we manage this? Have you figured out? You know?
We find it difficult to insist that people can do that. I mean, with the game sound design, they're absolutely going to have recording gear. You can't not have recording gear. With the composers, not all of them are in a location where it's practical for them to do that. However, an enormous number of them are very talented instrumentalists, and they play on each other's stuff.
Cool.
They say, "Hey,
cool."
Yeah, we had a guy who played oud. He was an Australian and he played oud, and somebody wanted an oud, who's in Los Angeles, said, "Okay, just send me the track." It's the remote working thing again. Yeah. We got wonderful violinists and cellists and things, and they play on each other's stuff. We also do regular solo sessions through the year, where I get in some of my friends, session players, and they'll write a minute of music, and they'll get one rehearsal and 2 recordings, and then the musician will tell them why the piece is great or why it's unplayable. And so they get in microcosm what all those ghastly learning experiences I had when I was cocking things up. So that they kind of get to learn before they're on a live job and it all goes wrong. But also you get to value the contribution of a live musician. When
Absolutely.
You hear, and you go, oh, your just heart melts, and you think, that's what I've been missing. Real thing.
So one of the other things that comes up a lot in my classroom is Game SoundCon, and Brian Schmidt did a survey fairly recently that talked about composers delivering sound design and sound effects. Yeah. And they said, I think the figure was 65% of composers that are delivering music for games are also delivering some sound design. Can you talk a little bit, I know you have a sound design program. Can you talk a little bit about your sound design program? And then do you have composers that are studying the game material get into that world a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It makes them more employable. When you go to a big game studio, you will find 1 or 2 composers and probably 6 or 7 or 8 audio people. So there is a lot of work. And also, it's more like a job because they're more likely to be on a long-term contract. And so it has a lot to, but the thing which, until, do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah, it's a job.
It's a job. But one of the things, when you really start to peel back the whole thing about creating sound for interactive media, I was talking to Charles Deenan, ex of EA and other, and I interviewed him and I was talking about this, and I'd been talking to him for about 45 minutes, and I said, "Well, Charles, thank you very much." He said, "No, stop, I haven't told you half as much." And he was so passionate about it.
Yes.
And it just kept talking until the battery eventually ran out on the camera. And
Charles is
he's talking about the narrative power of sound and how the things he hates most of things, like when you get, somebody asks for a sword impact, you just get a straight sword impact. It's too on the nose. It's got no attitude. It doesn't have any character. And it really opened up this whole thing that, what we do as composers, there's other people are doing for sound. And it's just as important to be able to give that sound character and to make the whole world live. I think the difference between the sound design program and the music program is there's probably more technology involved. There's more technical stuff involved in the sound design side. And there's more of the compositional involved. The balance is slightly different between the 2 programs. But we've got, the sound designers are incredibly giving. We've got amazing people who are teaching, with mega credit, and they're happy to tell people how to do what they do. And there's field sound recording and all that, and voice and Foley, and there's so much in there to learn, which is also why we produce the MFA, which is basically both the music side and the sound design. So people can come out able to offer both, because particularly working with indie studios and things, if you can say, yeah, of course I can do the sound, we know how to do that, that's a really big plus. And then you get the opportunity to write the music as well.
So your teaching staff are largely people who are in the industry now, who are working and also teaching?
100%. All of them work. Not one of them doesn't work.
Great.
Because, it's such a fast-moving industry that to have done it 10 years ago is not really, you'd just be way out of the loop. And this, because we all do this, and you see stuff change. And it was funny, we're doing a piece when we had a get-together in Los Angeles. One of our tutors is really top trailer guy, and he was saying, I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, last few weeks, last month, people want their mixes much drier. And this is the last few weeks, and he's working on the Ghostbusters trailer and things. So he's passing on stuff which he's noticing, right. And games is moving at the speed of light, dog years, all the time. So if you're not working with people who are at the bleeding edge of all this, then you're going to be teaching people ancient Greek and wondering why they can't order a coffee in Athens. You've got to be on the money, and so I'm in awe of people who've been prepared to give up their time and to come and join us, and it's it's a real privilege to have people like that willing and able to pass on their amazing amount of knowledge to the next generation.
And what are the pricing models? And is there some free content up there too for people that just want to sort of get their feet wet?
Yeah, we're developing more and more free stuff, because a lot of people, they want to know how it works, how the whole online thing works. So we've got short courses which people can do for relatively little or free, and the MAs are a single price. It's for a 12-month MA, it's $12,950. And that's a flat fee, whether you do it full-time or part-time. And the MFA, which is over 2 years, is $20,000.
And do the classes all start at the same time, and then that class moves through, or can you start at any time?
We have two intakes. We have a September and January each year. But they do move at different rates, because some of them are doing it 1 year full-time, some doing 2 part-time or 3 years part-time.
Oh, interesting. So okay.
They can move. If they find 1 year full-time is too hard, because that means about 30-something hours a week. Yeah. Or a lot of them, actually, because they're working people, they'll suddenly go, I've just got a big gig. What do I do? So, we're trying very hard to work out a scheduling model that works for people who get into that kind of position. So they can, at certain key points, they can transition between schedules. So they can go onto a much slower schedule. So they've got more time to do the work.
Right, so if someone has paid the fee and they have to take a month or two off to do some gig or something, then they can come back and pick it up.
There are deadlines, because we work in higher education. We have stacks of quality control above us. Right. We have to, when we put a deadline on the table, we do our level best to work with people to be able to make sure that there's a way that we can work with them. We've had some close calls, but we've never had a problem where people have not been able to hit their deadlines. But it is a matter of it's a matter of predicting problems before they happen. We've got some engagement management software we've built into our virtual learning environment, which works out how engaged people are, so it alerts us before they start dropping out, so that we can intervene before they've felt the need to ask for help, and that helps hugely to prevent people dropping out. So when we try and talk to them every week, so we know if there's a problem.
Cool.
But we do our best, but everything is more difficult, but then it's also more realistic. So, swings and roundabouts.
Well, Guy, thank you very, very much for your time today. We're really, really happy that you were so honest and open about all of the, the realities of being a composer and a working composer in this world. It's, it's a wonderful, wonderful profession to follow, but it really certainly has its challenges.
Yes, it does. But look, we're all smiling. We're all sitting around in nice places. It's, if you get to the other side, you know, it's pretty good. It's worth the effort. I think we all agree.
Absolutely.
But, you know, yeah. Well, no, it's absolutely my pleasure to be here. It's great to be able to share this with you and compare notes, you know, with the limited number of other people who teach this stuff. So it's really nice to be able to chat. It's a very small club, but we should get together sometime.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very good.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Guy.
Thank you for listening to the Designing Music Now podcast, a podcast dedicated to the craft of creating music for video games and interactive media. Please visit us at designingmusicnow.com for more info, news, and reviews on this subject. We would love to hear from you.